In the quiet town of Boulder, Colorado, the holiday cheer of Christmas 1996 turned into a nightmare that shook the nation. JonBenét Ramsey, a 6-year-old beauty queen with a bright smile, was found brutally murdered in her own home. Decades later, the case remains one of the most perplexing and infamous mysteries in true crime history. Who killed JonBenét Ramsey? Why has justice been so elusive? In this documentary, we delve deep into the case's details, the shocking twists, and the ongoing fight for answers.
On the morning of December 26, 1996, the Ramsey family's quiet home in Boulder, Colorado, became the epicenter of a devastating tragedy. Patsy Ramsey, waking early, found a chilling ransom note on the staircase demanding $118,000 for the safe return of her 6-year-old daughter, JonBenét. The note was oddly detailed and lengthy, warning the family not to contact authorities. Despite the note's instructions, John and Patsy immediately called the police. Officers arrived around 6 a.m., initiating what would become one of the most infamous criminal investigations in U.S. history. Friends and family members gathered at the home, inadvertently contaminating the crime scene. As the morning unfolded, the absence of clear leads heightened tensions. Around 1 p.m., John Ramsey and a family friend, Fleet White, discovered JonBenét's body in the basement. She was wrapped in a white blanket, with her wrists bound and a garrote fashioned from a paintbrush handle around her neck. The discovery was horrifying. An autopsy later revealed JonBenét died from asphyxia due to strangulation, compounded by a severe skull fracture. Evidence suggested she had also suffered physical trauma before her death, adding layers of complexity to the case. The ransom note, written on paper from the Ramsey home, immediately raised suspicions. Its peculiar wording and the fact that it was unusually lengthy for such a document baffled investigators. The $118,000 demand coincidentally matched the amount of John Ramsey's recent work bonus, further fueling speculation. The crime scene was poorly managed, allowing numerous people to enter and exit the house. Crucial evidence was likely compromised, including fibers and potential DNA traces. This mishandling would later come under scrutiny as investigators struggled to piece together the events leading to JonBenét's death. The media quickly descended upon the Ramsey home, amplifying the tragedy into a national spectacle. The juxtaposition of JonBenét's vibrant pageant photos with the gruesome details of her murder captivated and horrified the public. Speculation and accusations spread like wildfire. Law enforcement faced mounting pressure to solve the case, yet early mistakes hindered progress. Investigators were split between theories of an intruder and the possibility of family involvement. The lack of immediate suspects only deepened the mystery. JonBenét's murder cast a long shadow over the Ramsey family. While the investigation initially seemed to focus on finding justice, it quickly turned into a media circus. Public interest and outrage ensured the case would remain a lingering enigma. As Christmas decorations still adorned the Ramsey home, the joyous holiday season was replaced by unimaginable grief. The death of JonBenét Ramsey was not just a personal tragedy but a symbol of justice delayed, marred by missteps and unanswered questions. The investigation quickly turned its focus on the Ramsey family, an angle that sparked controversy from the outset. The ransom note, found inside the house and written on Patsy Ramsey's notepad, seemed suspicious to law enforcement. Its length and tone appeared inconsistent with genuine ransom demands. Patsy Ramsey's handwriting was compared to the ransom note, but the results were inconclusive. Although some analysts claimed similarities, the evidence was not definitive. The peculiarities of the note, including the amount matching John's bonus, added to the suspicion surrounding the family. The Ramseys' decision to hire high-profile legal representation early in the investigation was perceived by some as an admission of guilt. Critics accused them of obstructing justice, while the Ramseys maintained they were merely protecting their rights. This move polarized public opinion. Media coverage fueled public perception that the family had something to hide. The image of a seemingly perfect family contrasted sharply with the grisly crime. Speculation ranged from a botched cover-up to the involvement of someone close to JonBenét. Law enforcement's interrogation tactics drew criticism as well. Police sought to extract confessions or inconsistencies from the Ramseys, who they believed were withholding crucial information. The family, in turn, felt they were being unfairly targeted as scapegoats. A grand jury was convened in 1999 to weigh evidence against the Ramseys. Although they considered indicting the couple for child abuse resulting in death, prosecutors declined to press charges, citing insufficient evidence. This decision left the case in limbo. In 2008, new developments provided a glimmer of hope for the family. Advanced DNA testing cleared the Ramseys, pointing instead to an unidentified male. Boulder District Attorney Mary Lacey publicly exonerated the family, though skepticism lingered. Despite their exoneration, the Ramseys' reputation had already suffered irreparable damage. For years, they endured relentless scrutiny and accusations. Patsy Ramsey, battling cancer, passed away in 2006 without seeing her name fully cleared. The case remained mired in controversy as law enforcement shifted focus to other theories. Some investigators pursued the intruder hypothesis, suggesting that an outsider accessed the home through an unlocked window or door. Others still harbored doubts about the family. The enduring public fascination with the case highlighted the darker side of fame. For the Ramseys, it was a grim reminder of how quickly victimhood could transform into vilification. The shadow of JonBenét's murder would haunt them forever. In the decades since JonBenét's death, the case has remained active but unresolved. Modern advancements in DNA testing have sparked renewed interest, with experts urging authorities to revisit the evidence. Items like the garrote cord and JonBenét's clothing could yield new clues. John Ramsey has emerged as a vocal advocate for solving the case. Now in his 80s, he has criticized the Boulder Police Department for failing to embrace cutting-edge forensic technology. He believes private DNA labs could make significant breakthroughs if given access. In a recent interview with *People*, John expressed frustration with the lack of urgency. He described the case as solvable, but lamented bureaucratic obstacles. His pleas for action have resonated with the public, reigniting calls for justice. Documentaries and true crime series have kept the case in the spotlight. In 2024, Netflix released a series exploring the investigation's missteps and the possible involvement of an intruder. These productions have sparked fresh debates and new theories. One compelling theory involves a possible intruder accessing the home during the night. Investigators have identified DNA from an unidentified male on JonBenét's clothing. However, questions remain about how this person could have entered unnoticed. Critics argue that early mishandling of the crime scene severely hampered progress. Contaminated evidence and lost opportunities to secure critical items have left investigators with limited options. These errors underscore the need for thorough initial investigations. JonBenét's case has become a symbol of systemic failures in the justice system. It highlights the devastating impact of media sensationalism and public speculation. For many, it serves as a cautionary tale about the consequences of rushing to judgment. Despite the challenges, hope remains. Cold case units and independent experts continue to analyze leads. New techniques, including genealogical DNA tracking, could identify the unknown male or uncover other suspects. Jon Ramsey remains determined to honor his daughter's memory. He envisions a future where advanced science provides the answers that have eluded investigators for decades. His resolve underscores the enduring quest for truth. As the world waits for closure, JonBenét's story continues to resonate. Her vibrant smile and tragic end are reminders of a life cut far too short. The pursuit of justice for JonBenét Ramsey remains an unyielding call to action. Nearly 28 years after the horrific murder of JonBenét Ramsey, her father, John Ramsey, continues his relentless pursuit of justice. At 80 years old, John remains steadfast in his belief that the case can and will be solved, despite the obstacles posed by the Boulder Police Department. His frustration centers on the department's reluctance to utilize modern DNA technology on crucial evidence, including the handmade garrote used in JonBenét's strangulation. John has repeatedly called for advanced genetic testing on 7 key pieces of evidence, including items that were previously returned untested. Among these are the garrote, JonBenét's clothing, and the infamous ransom note. "We're begging the police to engage," he says, highlighting the availability of cutting-edge DNA labs eager to assist. The ransom note, found in the Ramsey home, remains one of the most perplexing pieces of evidence. Its detailed and oddly specific content led investigators to initially focus on the family, further complicating the case. While the note and other items have been analyzed before, John believes modern technology, particularly genetic genealogy, could provide answers that were previously unattainable. John's frustration with the Boulder Police Department is palpable. He has openly criticized their approach, stating that their refusal to seek outside help is a major barrier to solving the case. If it stays in the hands of the Boulder police, it will not be solved, he asserts. However, he remains optimistic that collaboration with external experts could break the stalemate. The upcoming Netflix docuseries Cold Case, Who Killed JonBenét Ramsey? Sheds new light on the case, revisiting the investigation's early missteps. It examines how the media circus surrounding the murder impacted both public perception and the course of the investigation. For John, the series represents an opportunity to keep JonBenét's story alive and to push for renewed efforts to solve her murder. The evidence points to the possibility of an intruder, supported by unidentified male DNA found on JonBenét's clothing. However, early mishandling of the crime scene left gaps in the evidence trail, making it harder to piece together what truly happened that fateful night. Advanced forensic techniques, such as genetic genealogy, could finally uncover the identity of the person responsible. John has also reflected on the personal toll of the tragedy. His late wife, Patsy Ramsey, passed away in 2006, still haunted by the accusations leveled against their family. Their son, Burke, who was only 9 at the time of the murder, has also lived under the shadow of public scrutiny and suspicion. For the Ramsey family, the pursuit of justice is not just about finding the killer, it's about clearing their names. Despite the challenges, John remains hopeful. He believes the answers are within reach if the right tools and experts are utilized. His advocacy underscores the importance of embracing modern forensic science in solving cold cases, not just for JonBenét but for countless others whose stories remain unresolved. As the anniversary of JonBenét's death approaches, her father's determination stands as a testament to the enduring power of love and the unyielding quest for truth. For John, This is not just a fight for justice but a way to honor the memory of his vibrant, joyful daughter. The haunting image of JonBenét Ramsey, a child beauty queen whose life was tragically cut short, continues to captivate and sadden the world. Her father's words resonate with the hope that one day, her killer will be found. It will be solved, John says with conviction. For now, the world watches and waits for justice to finally prevail.
All right, let's dive into one of those cases that just stays with you, the JonBenét Ramsey case.
Oh, absolutely. It's one of those cases that it's tragic, and the mystery just grabs you.
1996.
Yeah.
Christmas time in Boulder, Colorado. Picture this perfect family, and then their 6-year-old daughter, JonBenét, is found dead in their basement.
Yeah.
It's a story that has everything. It's horrifying. There's this family under suspicion, and the mystery is still going strong, even all these years later.
It really is. And it seems like there's just more and more information coming out all the time.
Exactly. And that's what we're going to try to do today, try to sort through it all. We've got a ton of news articles, investigative reports. We even have some recent interviews with John Ramsey himself. So our mission here is to see if we can piece things together, see what we actually know for sure, what are the main theories that people are still talking about, and how that whole search for justice has played out over time.
Yeah, because I think a lot of people, when they think of this case, they think of the Ramseys. And that's definitely a big part of it, but there's so much more to this story.
Yeah, definitely. So let's start back at the beginning. December 26th, 1996. Patsy Ramsey, JonBenét's mother, she calls 911. She says her daughter's missing, and there's this ransom note. They're asking for $118,000.
And right off the bat, there are some things that are they're weird. They don't quite add up.
Oh, yeah.
That ransom note, it's not your typical note. I mean, it's long, really long, and it's got all this strangely specific stuff in it.
Like what kind of stuff?
Well, like the amount they asked for, $118,000. Turns out that was the exact same amount as John Ramsey's bonus from work. What do you make of that? I mean, is that just a coincidence, or there's something more going on there?
That is really strange. You don't usually see something like that in a ransom note.
Yeah.
It's almost like they wanted to send a message.
It really does feel like that. And then, to make matters worse, they let friends and family into the house before the investigators got there, before they could really secure the crime scene.
Oh, wow.
From an investigation standpoint, that's a huge problem.
Yeah, I bet.
Think about it. I mean, potential evidence could have been moved, contaminated, all sorts of things. It really makes it hard to figure out what actually happened.
It's like a puzzle where some of the pieces are already missing.
Exactly.
And then hours later, they finally find JonBenét's body.
Right. And not in her bedroom, where you might expect.
Where was she?
Hidden in the basement.
Oh, gosh.
And the way she was found, it's chilling. Wrapped in a blanket, her wrists were bound, and the cause of death, strangulation. With a garrote, they made it out of a paintbrush handle.
Oh, my gosh.
It wasn't a quick or easy death. And on top of that, the autopsy showed a skull fracture, too. So, I mean, this wasn't just a random act of violence. It was brutal.
It's just awful. And it's understandable why, after all of that, suspicion immediately fell on the Ramsey family.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's a child found dead in their own home, a weird ransom note, and then the crime scene's potentially been compromised.
Yeah, that's not a good look.
And the media, oh man, they just went crazy. Every little detail about the family's life was splashed all over the news. Everyone was talking about it, debating it. And when they hired lawyers early on, which is pretty normal in these situations, people saw that as them trying to hide something.
It's almost like they couldn't win no matter what they did.
It really does seem that way. But even with all the focus on them, the handwriting analysis on that ransom note, inconclusive. They couldn't say for sure that Patsy Ramsey wrote it.
So could it have been someone else entirely?
That's the question, and that's where the grand jury comes in. This is a group of regular citizens who look at the evidence and decide if there's enough to officially charge someone with a crime.
Like a mini trial, almost.
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah.
And they spent months on this case. They heard testimony, looked at every piece of evidence, but in the end, they didn't indict the Ramseys.
So they weren't charged.
No. But here's the thing. They did consider charges of child abuse resulting in death.
Oh, wow.
So that tells you they weren't completely convinced the family was innocent either.
It's like they were caught in this limbo, right? Not charged, but not entirely cleared either.
Yeah, exactly. And the case just kept hanging over them. The media wouldn't let it go. Public opinion was divided. It must have been incredibly tough for them.
It's like a weight that never really goes away.
And then in 2008, there was a major development. DNA evidence popped up and it exonerated the Ramseys.
Wait, so someone else was involved?
It pointed to an unknown male. And it wasn't just any DNA. This was found on JonBenét's clothing, which means someone else was there at the crime scene.
So if it wasn't the Ramseys, then who was this guy?
That's the big question. And it leads us to a whole other theory, the intruder theory.
That someone broke in.
Exactly. Was there someone else in the house that night? How did they get in? And why would they target JonBenét?
And why hasn't that DNA been matched to anyone? After all these years, it's mind-boggling.
Well, some people think that because the crime scene was messed up in the beginning, some crucial evidence might have been missed.
Oh, right from when they let people in before the police.
Yeah. Footprints, fibers, fingerprints, all that stuff could have been lost or contaminated. It's frustrating, isn't it? The answer might be right there, but we just can't get to it because of what happened that night.
It really makes you think, what if they had done things differently? Would we know more now? But let's shift gears for a second and talk about John Ramsey. He's in his 80s now, and he's really been pushing to solve his daughter's murder. What do you think's driving him after all this time?
I think it's just he needs answers, He's been very critical of the Boulder Police Department, especially because they haven't wanted to use the latest DNA technology on some key evidence, like the garrote they used to strangle JonBenét.
He's not giving up.
No, not at all. He's convinced this case can be solved, that the technology's there to finally find the killer. He even said, quote, "It will be solved."
There's a new Netflix docuseries that looks at all of this, It goes into the mistakes that were made early on in the investigation and follows John Ramsey's fight for answers. It's a good reminder that even after all this time, the search for the truth hasn't stopped.
It hasn't, and it's a story that I think will continue to fascinate people for a long time. It's got all the elements of a great mystery, but at its heart, it's a human tragedy.
Exactly. So before we move on, I want to hear what you think so far. What really stands out to you about this case? What are your initial thoughts?
So many twists and turns, huh? You've got the shock of it all, and everyone's zeroing in on the family, and bam, that DNA evidence just flips everything on its head.
Right. And it gets you thinking about all those other cold cases out there, the ones where maybe the tech just wasn't good enough back then. Like, could there be answers just waiting to be found, just like with JonBenét?
It's a powerful thought, isn't it? And it really shows how much forensic science has come along, partly because of cases like this one pushing things forward.
But we can't forget about the people involved, Imagine what the Ramseys went through. Being suspects in their own daughter's murder, having everyone looking at them like that for years.
It's hard to even fathom, isn't it? And even after that DNA evidence cleared them, can you really ever escape that kind of attention? It's like people already made up their minds.
Yeah, like public opinion just takes over sometimes.
It does. And it makes you think about how important that idea of innocent until proven guilty really is, right? Because the damage can be done even if someone's cleared later on.
It's a good point. But zooming out a bit, what do you think this whole JonBenét case tells us about the justice system in general? I mean, what can we learn from it?
It's a reminder that even here, with all our laws and procedures, things can still go wrong. Evidence gets messed up, investigations have flaws, and innocent people can get caught in the middle of it all.
It shows that we can't just assume everything's perfect, that we always get it right.
Exactly. We need to be careful, make sure our methods are solid, and always be ready to adapt as we learn new things and tech gets better. JonBenét's case is a warning sign, but it's also pushed us to make changes for the better.
So even though we still don't have all the answers for JonBenét, it's like her case has made a difference in how we handle these investigations now.
Yeah, it's become the symbol of a family's loss that never goes away, but also of a system trying to learn from its mistakes. But we can't ignore the media's role in all this. I mean, the JonBenét case exploded in the media from day one. How do you think all that attention, all that constant coverage affected the investigation and how the public saw it?
It's like it's impossible to separate what really happened from what people were saying. There was news coverage all day long, everyone's speculating, and then all the documentaries and TV shows trying to figure it out. It's almost like the case turned into entertainment, which feels wrong when you remember what really happened to that little girl.
And all that hype can have real consequences. It can change what witnesses say, put pressure on the investigators, and even sway what the public believes, making it that much harder to see the truth.
And think about how the Ramseys were portrayed in the media. Those images, those headlines, they stick with people, even when new evidence comes out that tells a different story.
It's a good reminder that we can't just believe everything we see and hear, especially in cases like this with so much speculation and drama. We have to think critically.
Definitely. So speaking of finding the truth, John Ramsey's really focused on getting advanced DNA testing done on some of the key evidence. He thinks that's the key to finally figuring out who did it.
He's putting his hopes on science, that's for sure. But it's not as simple as just running a test, is it? There are other things to consider, ethical stuff.
Like what?
Well, there's privacy concerns, the chance of getting false positives, and even the impact of reopening the investigation on everyone involved. It's not just about getting an answer, it's about doing it the right way, ethically.
It's a tough spot to be in. But this is something we're seeing more and more as DNA technology keeps getting better. We can uncover secrets now that we couldn't before, but we have to be responsible with that power.
Exactly. Finding justice is important, but so is protecting people's rights. And even with the best technology, there are still things we might never know for sure.
It's a good point. What do you think about all this? Do you think going ahead with advanced DNA testing is the right move here? And if so, how can we make sure it's done in a way that respects everyone involved?
It's a tough call, and I don't think there's a clear answer. On one hand, you have the chance to finally solve this case, to give JonBenét's family some peace after all these years. But then you also risk bringing back all that pain, digging up those memories, and maybe even finding things out that some people would rather not know. It's a lot to weigh. What do you think? Is finding justice worth all that potential cost? Or are some things better left alone?
That's a really heavy question, and I honestly don't know. It's like you're trying to find a balance between finding the truth and protecting people from more pain. It makes you think about what JonBenét herself would want if she were here. Would she want them to keep searching, even if it meant bringing up all these difficult things? Or would she rather they let it be and focus on the memories of her life? Yeah, it's a real ethical dilemma, isn't it? Trying to weigh the potential for closure against the risk of causing even more pain. And with JonBenét's case, you've got that media frenzy to factor in too.
Oh, absolutely. That just adds a whole other layer of complexity. It's like anything new that comes up, any possible lead, it's going to be all over the news.
It's hard to even imagine being in that position, right? To suddenly be at the center of this huge case because your DNA popped up somewhere. Even if you were innocent, just the suspicion alone could be devastating.
Absolutely. It underscores how important it is to proceed cautiously and be sensitive to everyone involved. If they do decide to go ahead with advanced DNA testing, they have to be prepared for the possibility that the results might not be clear-cut. You could have degraded samples, partial matches, or even DNA from someone who was in the house at some point but had nothing to do with the crime itself.
It's a reminder that even with all the advancements in technology, there's still a level of uncertainty that we have to acknowledge. It's not like in the movies where DNA evidence magically solves everything.
Exactly. And sometimes, in cases like this, the focus shifts from finding a perfect solution to getting as close to the truth as we can, while recognizing that there are limits to what we can know for sure.
It makes you wonder what JonBenét would think about all of this if she were here today. Would she want them to keep digging into this, even if it meant bringing back all those painful memories and potentially causing more harm? Or would she prefer to let the past stay in the past and focus on the memories of her life?
That's a question we can't answer, of course, but it's worth considering. At the end of the day, any decision about what to do next needs to respect JonBenét's memory and recognize the impact this case has had on everyone involved.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into the JonBenét Ramsey case, what's the one thing you hope our listeners take away from this conversation?
I think the main takeaway is that this case is more than just a true crime story. It reflects our fascination with mysteries, our ongoing struggles with complex legal and ethical issues, and the human stories that are at the heart of every investigation.
It reminds us that even with advanced technology and forensic techniques, some questions might never be answered. But the desire to find the truth, to understand what happened to this little girl, that's what keeps driving us, makes us question, makes us think.
Absolutely. And even if we never have all the answers, JonBenét's case has left a permanent mark on our culture. It started important conversations about justice, ethics, and the way the media shapes how we see the world. It's a story that will keep fascinating and challenging us for years to come.
And that's what's great about doing a deep dive like this. It's not just about learning facts. It's about sparking curiosity, making you think, and encouraging you to explore these complex issues long after the episode is over.
Exactly. So if you're interested in learning more about this case, definitely check out that Netflix docuseries we mentioned earlier. It's a really thorough look at the investigation, explores different theories, and features interviews with key people involved. It's a thought-provoking watch that might leave you with even more questions than answers, but that's how it is with a truly captivating mystery.
And as always, we encourage you to do your own research, form your own opinions, and have thoughtful discussions about what we've talked about today. The JonBenét Ramsey case shows us that truth can be hard to find, but searching for it can be a powerful and eye-opening journey.
Well said. We'll leave you with this final thought. What do you think happened to JonBenét Ramsey? Which theory makes the most sense to you? And what would justice look like in a case this complicated and tragic? Keep those questions in mind as you continue to learn about this enduring mystery. Until next time, keep learning, keep questioning, and keep the conversation going.